One of the things that I was called and asked to reveal to someone this week was the doctrine of burial, or let's say the lack of the doctrine of cremation. And I know you think, well, that's some subject for today, but we needed something short, and this is fairly short. So, plus, we needed to know it too, because in the world today, cremation is an issue because of money, cost to start with. But it's not mentioned one time in the Bible by that name. And it is truly a cheaper way to dispose of a body. This is why the interest in it is heightened, because people don't have to spend as much money. But it's the lack of spirituality in the world that really drives it. Because we know that burials for those of us that are in Christ are special from the standpoint of honoring the person who's being laid to rest. It's not mentioned as a matter of principle, the cremation. Burial honors those in the grave. Any other type of body disposal does not, with the exception of those left dying on a battlefield, or who have perished at sea. They couldn't find them, couldn't retrieve the body. Those that were in accidents at sea and have perished, and other things of that nature, with the exception of those left in the ocean or disposed of having during wartime and other such instances. Burial is God's way of laying a person to rest, and also to glorify Himself. In the context of Satan, in Isaiah chapter 14, if you would like to turn there, the reason I'm doing this is because, or the reason I'm using him is because he gives us a clear understanding. In Isaiah chapter 14 and verses 18, 19, and 20, now in verse 18 it says, all the kings of the nations, even of all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house, his own tomb. So he's the word saying that those who were godly people, who were kings and godly people, they are in their own glory in their own tomb, their own house. But you, speaking of Lucifer, are cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Well, there's no glory in that. In other words, those that are godly people who love the Lord, Christians, who are buried today, it's a memorial to them. It's an honorarium to them. But to those who are not, it's not. And this is the word of the Lord telling us that. Verse 20. You shall not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land and slain your people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. And what's he saying? Well, you shall not be joined with them in burial. Now, he was dealing with the king of Assyria here, but the king of Assyria represented Satan, and Satan is mentioned directly as Lucifer. And so we know it's to people who have followed after Satan's plan in living life, and there's no honor there. But to those that did not, there is honor in their death, because they have lived for the Lord. But Satan and people who have lived aside from God, the seed of evildoers, shall never be renowned. And the word renowned means honored. They'll never be honored in the way that God intended for His people to be honored. This indicates that God honors the death of the righteous through a gravesite awaiting the rapture of Christ. You know, my brother, in fact, both my brothers have passed on, and my one brother got saved on his deathbed, and I was privileged to be able to lead him to Jesus. And the other brother was a pastor as well in Tennessee, and they're both in heaven today. And many of you all, well, everybody here has somebody that was close to them that's in heaven today. But their soul's there, but their body is not. And their body is memorialized or honored by the fact that it was a Christian burial, and their lives were brought up during that. I hope they were. I try to do that when I preach a message at a funeral. But I try to bring that up, the person, who they were, and the type of person, what they did for Jesus, if there's things there that I know. And they're there in the graveside awaiting the rapture of Christ to resurrect them to everlasting life. The spirit's there, but the body's in the grave. We have a beautiful cemetery here, by the way, and I'm real honored to be able to say to you that you all keep this cemetery very well. It's a beautiful one with flowers and all that's there. But most of the thing that's beautiful there were the lives of the people that are residents there at this point, awaiting the return of Christ. We see again that burial is a type of honoring in Jeremiah chapter 16 and verse 4 and 6. Verse 4 says, "They shall die of grievous deaths." Now, this is talking about the sons and daughters that were born in this place here, which was not the place that God intended for it to be. When they came into the promised land, you know, they denied. They didn't want to come into the promised land. There were too many things there they didn't like. The people, the sons of Anak, who were giants, and so there were several things there. Now they said in 4, "They shall die of grievous deaths. They shall not be lamented. They shall not be mourned. Neither shall they be buried but they shall be as dung upon the face of the earth, and they shall be consumed by the sword and by famine, and their carcasses shall be meat for the fowls of heaven and for the beasts of the earth. Now, there is a time coming when the nations in the north and the nations in the south of Israel, north of them, east of him actually too, and also south of them, will come up to Jerusalem just prior to the return of Jesus Christ. And they will come up to fight against the Antichrist because they have found him to be dishonorable. He has corrupted the temple and has claimed to be Christ himself, God, as he takes over the temple. And there'll be a great battle brewing there. And there will be a battle, and there will be then the return of Christ, and he will slay the nations, and there will be, well, as I understand it, there will be millions of bodies out in the land there that have been killed. And they will go around and they will try to mark the bodies. Men will go out, maybe women as well, and they will mark the bodies, and so that burial teams can come and bury them. But many of them won't receive a burial. And God says that they're not actually worthy of a burial, and that they will receive nothing there. Verse 6 says, both the great and the small shall die in this land, meaning those that are poor and those that are wealthy, those that are not very important to the world and those that are important to the world. Many of them will die. Neither shall men lament for them or mourn for them, nor cut themselves for them as a ritual. That was a satanic ritual, or one sponsored by Satan to deform yourself or to damage yourself in lament for someone else, nor make themselves bald for them. Verse 7, neither shall men tear themselves for them in mourning, to comfort them for the dead, neither shall men give them the cup of consolation, to drink for their father or their mother who had passed away, who had died in those battles in that time. Now, not even cremation was given to them, no honor, and so forth. Now, in Psalm 106:18, the wicked were burned up because they did not destroy the wicked people around them, but instead intermingled with them and took up their evil ways. Now, we know that the nation of Israel, when they moved into the promised land, many of them refused God and took up with people who lived in the land, and instead of running them out or destroying the people in the land, they joined with the land, people of the land, and they started to intermingle with them as far as marriage goes, was against God's will. It's still against God's will for people who are Christians to marry someone who is not a believer. That's not God's plan. And so they did those things in their evil ways, and there was no honor in that. Psalm 106, if you want to look at it real quick. 106 and I think 18. Yeah. Verse 18. It says this, And fire was kindled in their company. The flame burned up the wicked. So, the flame will soon be met by those who did not know Jesus Christ or do not know Jesus Christ in their death, because not only in this particular case, in cremation, a lot of them are being cremated today. It's once again, it's become a kind of popular thing. But it's not popular with God, and it's not popular with people who understand that the place they're going, those that are not living for Jesus as a Christian, will face their eternal death in a place called hell, and or one other name, or other names for it. And they will be in fire forever and ever. Deuteronomy chapter 9 verse 3. I think I had a lot of other things here, but I don't think I need it. I'll cover a couple more things. We have something we have to do. Deuteronomy 9:3 says, talking about the Anakim. The Anakim were the giants in the promised land that the people that went over to spy it out were afraid of, except for Caleb and Joshua. They were not afraid of anything that appears to be on earth. And God said to drive them out and destroy them quickly. Possible cremation due to the wickedness for sure, but no honorable burial. They were to be driven out, and if possible to destroy them, the whole lot of them, and do whatever needs to be done, but not an honorable burial, because they were not an honorable people. In Romans chapter 6 and verse 4, it says, therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death. That's Christ. Let me turn over there now. Romans chapter 4.
Chapter 4 or chapter 6?
Huh?
4.
Oh, 6. I'm sorry. Yeah, chapter 6. Verse 4. Yeah. Knowing this, that our old man, that's the body, old life, old person, not in years, but in sin, is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. What did I just read? Verse 6?
No, that's not it.
Yeah, that's verse 6. I was coming to that. Well, now you've got it already. Well, verse 5 too. All right, 4 says, therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. Well, we were raised up. We're made to be more than we are through the power of God and the newness of life through our salvation. And then in verse 5, he says, for we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall also be also in the likeness of his resurrection. We were not God's people when we were born. We were his people because he gave us life through our mother and father, but we were not His people, not in the sense of His glorified or lifted up people that would live a life for Him, but as though we became that, then we should walk in newness of life, and that at our burial we will be buried together in the likeness of His death, and we shall be resurrected in the likeness of His resurrection. So praise be to God that we are. There's much more if you want me to give you some more after we finish our work that we have to do this morning that we planned. I leave it at that because that's enough for you to understand is that, people are cremating and doing things of that nature, and I understand when they don't have the money to burial. There's people today that are being cremated because there's no money to bury them and different things. I feel sorry for them if they were believers, and I encourage people to make sure they put away enough money to take care of their body and their burial. They not be cremated, but they be buried, if they're Christian people, to be buried in the likeness of Christ in death, and to be resurrected someday to everlasting life.